Okay, for part number 3 of numbers to 100,000, okay, we are actually talking about rounding off and estimation. And the main concepts you should know is about rounding off to the nearest tens, okay, and versus rounding off to the nearest hundreds, to the nearest thousands, and so on. Okay, but the idea is the idea is the same. Once you find out the concept. Okay, so these are the two main things, and the bonus will be actually estimation. Why I say it's an estimation, because usually exams are not tested. Okay, you might want to ask yourself why later when I go through. Okay, yeah, but just know that it's usually not tested for now. So to start off this topic, okay, I would like to talk about the concept of rounding off. Okay, so why do you need rounding off? Okay, for example, I have 3,456 buttons and I walk down the street, okay? And person A wants to know how many buttons I have. What do I tell him? I mean, do I go and tell him I have 3,456 buttons? And, I mean, does he need to know so much information? Must he know the exact number of buttons I have? And what if person B, C, D, E, F, G wants to know too? Do I go and tell them I have 3,456 buttons each? I mean, what I'm trying to say is that the main idea in rounding off is actually simplifying a certain number so that it's easy to communicate as well as it's easy to share. Okay, so that's the main idea. And when we round off, okay, there are different ways of rounding off, because I can say, okay, I can round this off such that it becomes 3,000. Okay, I can start telling people that, hey, I have 3,000 buttons. Or I can round it off such that I can say I have 3,500 buttons. You know, I can go around telling people I have 3,500 buttons, or I can go round off to say that I have 3,460 buttons, and it all depends on how accurate you want to be. Okay, obviously this is the most convenient, right? But also less accurate, right? This is, I don't know, a bit less convenient, I mean, than 3,000, right? Because you still have to add another 500. I have to say 3,500 is a bit less convenient. But you can see it's a bit more accurate. What do I mean accurate? It's nearer to the actual number than this. Can you see that? Okay, this is 3,500. This is 3,456. It's only about 44 buttons away from the actual number. But as you can see here, it is 456 buttons away from the actual number. Yes, although it's convenient, but you can see that it's so many more buttons away from the actual number, so therefore it's less accurate. Whereas this, okay, is less convenient but more accurate. And when you can see, let's say I have 3,460, you can see that, it's only 4 buttons away from the actual, okay? Which means it's actually even more accurate than 3,500, but it is less convenient. It's so much less convenient that actually sometimes it might not even make sense, because 3,460 is, like when you simplify, it's not much different from this. Okay, so it depends on situation. You want to round off to a different number. Okay, so just a quick idea, when you round off to the nearest 1,000, you actually get this number. That I haven't really explained the concept, but I just want you to have a brief idea of what it is. Okay, so for this number is actually rounded off to the nearest 1,000. This is rounded off to the nearest 100. Okay, wait, where's my pen? Okay, this is rounded off to the nearest 100, and this is actually rounded off to the nearest 10. Okay, as you can see, if you round off to the nearest 10, it is actually less convenient but more accurate. And when you move towards rounding off to the nearest 1,000, it's actually more convenient and less accurate. Okay, now back to the methodology, as in to the method to rounding off a number. Okay, so how do you round off a number? Okay, the main thing you need to remember is actually this scale here. Okay, this scale here, as well as this I don't know, I will call it like a chart. Okay, this chart. Okay, if you can remember this scale, okay, wait, let me see, this scale as well as this chart, you should be able to round off any number. Okay, and the concept that I talked about earlier, this concept, okay, is good to know, but it's not that important during exams, right? But at least when you know the concept, you know what you are doing this rounding off for, yeah, and you can better apply to other situations if you need in the future. Okay, so now rounding off to the nearest 10. So how do I round off to the nearest 10? Okay, back to this scale here. Okay, rounding off to the nearest 10. Okay, the idea is, okay, whenever I talk rounding off a certain number, okay, I have to know whether it will add one more. Okay, this is actually plus 1. I shouldn't put it as 1. I should put it as plus 1. Okay, it's either, there are two options, okay, of rounding off. Either you plus 1 to a number or 0. Okay, this is the key. I say again, it's either plus 1 or a 0, and this is the main thing in rounding off that you should remember. Either a plus 1 or 0. If you need to remember anything, it's actually just these two main concepts. I say again, it's so important, I really have to say again. It's either plus 1 or 0. Okay, so when you round off, it's either you plus 1 to the number or 0. Okay, so when do you plus 1? You plus 1 whenever the number is 5 or greater. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you plus 1. Therefore, you see this arrow here. Okay, and when it's 4 or below, you convert it to 0. Okay, don't worry if you cannot understand for now how to use this scale, because I haven't really explained the main concept. But just remember plus 1 and 0. And when it's 5 and above, you plus 1. When it's 4 and below, you turn to 0. Okay, so now let's go to an actual question so that you actually know what's happening. Okay, be patient. Alright, so now let's say you are asked to round off 345 to the nearest 10. Okay, so this is a number I want to round off. Okay, I want to simplify. Remember the example just now? Okay, I have a certain number and I want to simplify it. Okay, so let's say I have a number here, 345. Okay, and I want to round it off to the nearest 10. Okay, so this is the method. Okay, first you find the number. Okay, so find the number that I'm referring to. When they say it's nearest 10, I choose the number that is in the tens place. So this is in a ones place, this is in a tens place. So this number is Mr. Important. So what happens to this number? It will either plus 1 or plus 0. I say again, this Mr. Important, how do you determine it? Okay, is that when they ask you to round off this number to the nearest 10, you find the number in the tens place. This is 1, this is 10, this is hundreds, right? So you find the number in the tens place, this is Mr. Important. It's either you plus 1 or you plus 0. Okay, now, when you round this off to the nearest 10, okay, you find the number, this Mr. Important, is either plus 1 or 0. Then you look next door. Okay, look next door. This is the number next door. Alright? If it's 5 or more, you add 1 more. So add 1 more. What does it mean? It means Mr. Important plus 1 now. Okay? And if it's less than 5, just ignore. Which is, if it's this number beside it, if it's 4 and below, you just ignore. Means you plus 0. Okay? So now, how to round off this number? This number, therefore, when you round off to the nearest 10, okay, will actually give you 350. I say again, it's 350 because why? Mr. Important, you have to plus 1 to this Mr. Important, okay, because this is 5 or more. So this becomes 5 and any number at the back becomes 0. Okay, but although it becomes 0, you must make sure that the value still remains the same. What do I mean? Means this is in the tens place, okay? You don't go and add another 0 at the back here, okay? Wait, let me redo that. Okay, you don't put another 0 at the back here because this number changes so much from the original number. This 4, this in the tens place is no longer in the tens place now. Now suddenly it becomes in the thousands place, okay? So don't ever do that. So whenever you round off, you must make sure that the value, okay, of the other numbers, okay, is still more or less there, okay? As I said, is rounding off gives you a kind of like an estimate, okay? And you see this curly whirly equal sign, okay? It is deliberate. It's not that my handwriting, suddenly go crazy, okay? It's actually deliberate, okay? This sign actually means, okay, estimate, okay? So how you draw this sign is actually this, you draw like a worm or like a wave, okay? You draw an N, then you combine it with a W, okay? So it's an N combined it with a, not W, sorry, N combined with a U, N combined with a U. So this gives you an estimation or rounding off sign, okay? So 345 rounded off to the nearest 10, okay? This is the nearest 10, give you 350. Okay, now round off 344 to the nearest 10. Okay, so this is another example to show you how to round off. So 344, when you round off to the nearest 10, okay, what should you get? Okay, now first I find the number, okay, to the nearest 10. This is in the tens place. Then I look next door. Okay, take note of the arrows I draw and the lines I highlight. Okay, you should do the exact same method unless you have a better method in future, okay? If not, just follow what I do, you more or less you'll get it correct, okay? So 344, this is Mr. Important. Find the number, look next door, okay? So if it's 5 or more, you add 1 more. So is this 5 or more? It's not. It's actually less than 5, which is 4 or less, okay? Remember this scale, okay? As long as 5 including 5 or more, you add 1 more. Anything less than 5, okay, you actually round it off to 0. Not round it off to 0, you add 0, okay? So for this, because it's 4, which is less than 5, okay, I add 0 to Mr. Important. I say again, the number beside it is less than 5, so I add a 0 here, okay? Now you might be thinking, why do I do all these procedures? Okay, the idea is you should just memorize it. Okay, don't think too much why this procedure is happening. It's just that this is the convention we use so that to simplify a certain way. And as I said, you look at the number next door, you find that it's less than 5. So what happened? You add 0 to this. So 3, when you round off, it gives you 3, 4. Okay, and because I add 0, it remains 4, right? Anything else at the back, okay, becomes a 0. Okay? So what do I mean anything else? Okay, you look at the last example, you will know what I mean. Okay, now, rounding off to the nearest 100, 347 to the nearest 100. So how do we do that? Okay, we get 347, okay, to the nearest 100. I find the number. So now, I said nearest 100. This is in the hundreds place. So now, the Mr. Important becomes this number, the hundreds place, right? And you look next door. When you look next door, you find that is 4 or less. Sorry, it's less than 5. Okay, so what happens? Okay, this means that 3, Mr. Important, adds plus 1 or 0. Plus 0. Okay, so what happens is that you get 300, right? This remains, okay, and the other numbers at the back become 0. So when you round off to the nearest 100, it gives you 300. Alright? So that's it.